Greetings to you all fellow travelers. This is Krotnip, welcoming you all back to the logbook of a simple Lindworm traveler. In today's episode of the Forces of the Northern Tribes series, we are going to complete our journey through the first wave releases of the Northern Tribes by talking about the last release for now that we have and are about to see, the large model of the Northern Tribes, the rock troll. So who are the rock trolls? As those familiar with this channel or the source material know by now, orcs of Lindworm believe that when they die, their spirits will return to the so-called world spirit, and from there they will eventually, at least in most cases, be born back to the world of the living. Sometimes the former orcish spirits will return as orcs, varangs, or maybe some type of wild animals, and sometimes they will even return as elemental forces, such as storms or rock formations. Usually the orcs that live in Lindworm do not possess the ability to remember any of the past lives that their spirits have thus far led, but the evokers are the exception to this rule, and they can focus on some of their memories from past lives in order to gain power from their mystical communion with their past selves. Interestingly enough, it would appear that remembering the lives lived or existence had as elemental forces eludes even the most powerful evokers, except when it comes to their connection to the past as rocks and mountains and such formations. This means that the evokers feel often a kinship towards the rocky elements, and thus they can even sometimes speak to the rocks, raise them in anger, and then direct their elemental allies to fight against the enemies of the Northern Tribes. And these stone or rock elementals are what are called rock trolls in the world of Lindworm. So not your traditional fantasy troll, really closer to a rock elemental maybe. With the backstory covered, let's talk about the gameplay potential of this centerpiece for a Northern Tribes company. As you can see, this card is taken from Corvuspelli's very own Corvusphere. Their Warcrow army builder there is the official source for truth, and I wanted to start using pictures taken from there for the artistic value that they provide over the older first generation cards. Again, I salute Tikbalang and all the people behind the fan-made Warcrow army builder. I would not have been able to do what I do without their help. So even though I'm now using Corvusphere for this, I still appreciate your work a great deal. The Rock Troll is surprisingly cheap at 35 points. Yes, an average cost for a unit in line with a unit of Warg Riders without any characters attached, or a basic unit of Orc Hunters with the cheapest possible character joining in the Orc Wise Main. Then again, 35 points isn't all that much when we compare it to something like some of our more expensive characters. For example, it's 5 points less than the Orc Revenant. And it's also surprisingly 5 points less than the hegemony's war rig. So I'm really happy to see this points cost going forward. At face value, the rock troll does seem slow at movement 2-2 and a 8 stride charge. You do have to bear in mind, however, that since the rock troll occupies a large base, each of their movement or legs of their movement will add the width of the base, and in this instance it's not going to be 2 strides but rather 4 strides. So actually when it comes to covering ground, 2-2 and 8 is equal to a 4-4 movement with a 10 stride charge on a normal standard base size model. So actually the rock troll charges as far as most of our infantry units, and it's actually slightly faster when maneuvering for position than a Varang infantry unit would be. Then again, the 2-2 movement can at points make it difficult for the rock troll to clear obstacles, especially and usually other models, because with a 2 stride base, the rock troll effectively has to be pretty much base to base with another model in order to be able to pass through them in a single leg of their movement. At whopping 9 wounds, rock troll has the highest wounds attribute of any model released to Warcrow so far. As we are about to see, this is actually only half of the truth, since damaging the rock troll is going to be exceptionally difficult, and taking one out doesn't mean the end of the rock troll as a tactical element necessarily. At a single yellow dice, the rock troll is sporting a abysmal willpower, but this doesn't actually mean all that much, since as we're about to see, the rock troll is indeed a golem, who would have imagined, so they will never break due to excess morale or for any other reason. So the yellow willpower essentially only comes in when the rock troll is about to be affected by something that targets the willpower of the unit in question. So yes, the rock troll can be more susceptible to some willpower targeting effects, though they are absolutely immune to many of them at the same time. At Morale 2, the rock troll can activate a couple of times each round, and they can endure some incoming stress from the enemy, but at the same time they are not going to be a type of model that you will activate over and over again to pummel your opposing forces. Understandably, there's only a single rock troll available per company, but when we consider the troll's synergistic existence with the evoker, one might be tempted to even run two if we were given the chance, but alas, one is what we have to make do with, at least for now. Golem means that the rock troll is essentially unbreakable. It will never flee from the field of battle, and any excess stress put on it will simply go away. At the same time, Golem keyword interacts with certain pieces of terrain, for example, looking at dense forests, and since the rock troll lacks any preferred terrain special rule, movement impairing terrain is going to be a problem for this stony giant. Let's take a closer examination of large a bit later on, so we will be coming back to that soon. The rock troll lacks any innate conquest value, and this seems to be the way that Corvus Belli is looking to balance out the large centerpiece models like rock troll and Warwick. They do pack quite some punch and some quite interesting tactical capabilities. So the designers have decided to give them a zero conquest value so as to not make them too expensive. And from what little experience I have with these two models so far, I can concur that this is a valid approach to balancing these units out. Interestingly and sadly, the rock troll lacks preferred terrain rugged, as already alluded to previously, and this is something that will hinder this giant's movements and even charges at times. Playing Warc Riders a bunch has left me feeling that large-based models are innately immune to the rugged terrain, but that's really not the case. That's just the life of a Warc Rider or a mounted Wrathmane, and the Rock Troll will have to worry about slow inducing and charge blocking terrain when they are operating on the field. As the rock troll is the first large unit in Northern Tribes, let's stop here for a while to take a look at some of the buffs that large incorporates. This keyword went through quite significant changes in the latest update, and I have to say that I for one think that these are changes that were made for the better, and also they simplified how large units play while also giving them a distinct niche, as we are about to see. As befits a lumbering stone giant, the rock troll is able to move and thus assault and charge through not only friendly units but also through enemy units, provided that it can clear them. Here the 2-2 movement is going to be your enemy, since clearing enemy models with a single 2+ base size movement isn't going to be trivial in all cases. Then again, if you can leverage a charge, that should alleviate the problem somewhat. There are some rock troll related questions that have risen within the ranks of the Northern Tribes players and our opponents, and this presentation incorporates a couple of answers to these questions that have been gained through responses of the Corvus Belli Warcrow FAQ team, such as is the case with the next one. The line of sight, no blocking line of sight that the non-large units do, or rather don't do, in relation with large units has been explained as to work in both ways. So non-large units do not block line of sight towards large units such as rock trolls, since they are so big that they can obviously be seeing over smaller combatants, but at the same time the rock troll also can draw line of sight over smaller combatants, which means that they can, under the right circumstances, for example charge through a unit to get to another unit behind the first one. So that's really cool. Speaking of charging, large units that are already engaged in combat can also declare a charge against a different target and leave combat to charge something else. Unfortunately, assault is not on the table, but thanks to the fact that it's been clarified that large units can indeed see over smaller ones, this should open up possibilities for a rock troll to charge past the front line even once engaged, in order to get to the juicy stuff behind the support elements, enemy force commanders and such. As befits the theme, large units are immovable, which means that they cannot be displaced, placed, pushed, attracted, shoved, and so forth. So once you plant your giant rock formation in the way of your opponent, there they will remain until they get hacked to pebble. A new addition in the latest update was also that large units can ignore in turn the immovable keyword from non-large enemy units. And this I find extremely cool, and it gives large units a clear niche. They are the ones who can push your troublesome bulwarks away from objectives, and this is a welcome counterplay in my mind, especially in the case of the rock troll, as showing enemy units away from their immediate vicinity is something that this unit is quite capable of achieving with flying colors. Speaking of shoving someone away, let's take a look at the melee attack breakdown for the rock troll. The offensive dice set of a red dice, triple orange, and a yellow should feel quite familiar to you Northern Tribes veterans out there. This is exactly the same offensive roll as a standard unit of orc hunters has access to, and this attack roll even includes exactly the same double special switch that allows the rock troll to inflict the vulnerable state upon the enemy. So about 84% of the time the rock troll should be able to reduce the defensive ability as well as stop the enemy from pushing for extra defensive performance until the state is cleared. The unique thing about the rock troll's attack is not the switch, obviously. It's not the average 3, maximum 6 damage of your standard orc hunters. It's the fact that the rock troll has access to a single hollow success switch ability that allows the rock troll to shove whopping 8 strides the target of their attack. But this shove is contingent upon the enemy unit being engaged with your rock troll, so no shoving the enemy several times over even if you manage to get several hollow successes on your attack roll. On the dice set above, the chance of achieving at least one hollow success is 56%, give or take, so a little bit better than a coin toss. And if you are charging and you're looking to trigger this switch specifically, you are looking at something close to, I think, 80% chance of triggering this switch at least once on your charge attack or on your charge attack reroll. This means that the rock troll should be a threat to enemy units looking to hold down objectives, since as long as the dice are willing to provide for the rock troll, they can simply shove off enemy units that are protecting objectives, and if there is no one left there to contest the now way less hot spot of a objective, the rock troll can then claim it to the Northern Tribes cause even at the non-existent conquest value of 0. Obviously, this can also turn out to be quite a backbreaking, a trap for the Northern Tribes player. If you are looking to hang the balance of the game on a 56% chance or about 80% of a chance, you are asking to get unlucky, you are asking to lose the game as a result. So I personally try to consider this possibility of shoving just as that, a possibility that's meant to make my opponent sweat, but that's not necessarily something that I can entirely rely on. Speaking of things that are meant to make one's opponent sweat, take a look at that defense breakdown over there. The rock troll is rolling a quite respectable triple green dice when they are defending against enemy attacks, and I don't think we have seen triple green with any defense roll in the game so far. As those familiar with how the dice in Warcrow work know by now, the green dice will on average provide you almost a single block per dice, which means that the rock troll on average should be rolling about 3 blocks. In addition, the green dice is the only defensive dice that has the possibility of rolling a double block, but unfortunately there is only a single facing on these dice that have that possibility. So while there is a theoretical possibility of having 6 blocks on a defense roll by your rock troll, I don't think that's going to be happening all that often. Then again, we do have to remember that the rock troll is working with whopping 9 wounds, so each defense roll that this creature is making isn't going to be a life or death situation truly, but rather this high defense roll I feel is about imposing a near unacceptable cost on enemy trying to inflict meaningful damage on the rock troll, and that cost being mostly measured in activations spent, even though as we are about to see soon enough there are other potential costs involved in attacking a rock troll, at least in melee combat. In addition to providing a large average block tally, the defense roll of the rock troll has a 1/3 chance thereabout of inflicting disarmed upon the attacker. This is pretty nice because if you are unlucky enough to roll a hollow shield on your block or on your green dice, then at least you are imposing a negative state upon your enemy. And disarmed is nice because it not only allows you to strip a offensive dice from the enemy after they have rolled at least one success on such a die, but it also stops the enemy from pushing for extra performance when attacking until they have been able to somehow clear this state. So all in all, landing meaningful damage on the rock troll should be exceedingly difficult, and enemies should be wary of even attempting such a task. While we are on the topic of taking a look at attributes, roles and skills that make the rock troll very unappealing target for the enemy to attack, let's talk about this model's first passive skill, Rubble. Rubble triggers at the resolution of a combat, so essentially it's only applicable when the rock troll performs a melee attack or they are the target of a melee attack, since this is the only situation where we are resolving a combat essentially. So Rubble is not going to be applicable in the case of opportunity attacks and things of this nature. What Rubble does in practice is that when the rock troll is wounded during fighting, regardless of who's doing the attacking in that round of melee combat, the rock troll gets to roll a yellow dice per wound suffered, up to a maximum of 3. And for every success that the player controlling the rock troll gets from these yellow dice, they will be inflicting an automatic wound against the enemy that has just attacked the rock troll. I checked by sending an FAQ email to the Corvuspeli team, who were very kind to answer back rather quickly. My question was whether the wounds caused by rubble actually affect the result of the combat. EA who won and who's going to be suffering stress, and if there is going to be a chance to try and push someone back. And their answer was that yes, rubble does indeed affect the winner of the combat. Then again, I don't think this is going to be coming up all that often. Since when defending, the rock troll is going to be suffering, let's say, 3 wounds, and then you are rolling 3 yellow dice, and the only chance that you essentially have of tying the combat is getting a success out of all of those 3 dice, since the rock troll has no natural way of attacking back while defending, so the enemy doesn't have to worry about rubble tipping the scales of a drawn combat. If you are getting to roll rubble while defending, you are about to lose, and the rubble might theoretically stop you from losing, but I don't think there is a way for you to be winning via the use of this skill, at least not any that I can think of at the moment. When attacking, the rubble also gives the possibility of retaliating against enemy retaliatory attacks that happen while the enemy is defending against the rock troll. So actually, this can turn out to be a way to empower the rock troll against enemies that are attacking it back. And since, as we already talked about, we are rocking 9 wounds, and there are even other durability increasing skills that we are going to be taking a look at later, suffering wounds on the rock troll isn't going to be a big problem, but dealing damage, automatic wound damage that is, on enemies might be a big deal. Obviously, suffering an automatic wound or 2 isn't going to be the end of the day or isn't going to ruin the day for most enemy units, but then again, there are those high value, high defense rolling enemies that really hate to have any incidental automatic wounds inflicted upon them, and these are the types of units that are going to be very dissatisfied seeing rubble fall on them. Shadows of the U come into mind, for example, immediately. Not that the shadows are going to be attacking the rock troll if they can help it, but you get my meaning. Remember that rolling yellow dice is extremely unreliable a thing to do. As you can see from the calculation that I did, you only get average 0, 1, 1 successes out of this roll when rolling 1, 2 or 3 yellow dice, and obviously the maximum is equal to the amount of dice that you are rolling. The next passive skill on the rock troll is called Slumber. This is a passive skill that gets triggered the first time the rock troll is destroyed. And that is quite an ominous sentence to utter out, the first time something is destroyed. A little bit of foreshadowing on what's coming up rather soon. When the rock troll triggers Slumber, so once per game at max, the Northern Tribes player has to place a rugged piece of terrain, 6 strides wide, centered on the last position of the rock troll before it was destroyed. This is going to be becoming rather important next when we get to look at the ability Raise the Rock. But if we just analyze this skill from the point of view that we are adding a piece of terrain, difficult terrain on the field for the moment, Slumber can end up affecting both or one or the other players' performance going forward, or the company's performance going forward quite drastically. Rugged terrain not only induces the slowed state upon any units that come adjacent to this piece of terrain, but it's also a type of terrain that stops charges from units that lack the preferred terrain rugged special rule. So positioning your wounded and soon to be diseased rock troll in a way that will force your opponent to endure the negative effects of this terrain is going to be something to be on the lookout for, while you also probably want to be planning in a way where your rock troll doesn't fall apart in front of your main battle line, thus slowing down your forces and potentially denying them the chance to charge their enemies. But no matter how much we talk about the effects of rugged terrain as is, the big thing about slumber is the third passive skill on the rock troll, and that is called raise the rock. This is a permanent passive skill that actually upgrades or improves allied evoker models. So essentially the orcish sorceress that you may decide to include in your company, especially now when the rock troll is available. Raise the rock essentially gives the evokers a additional spell, a third spell. And what the Raise Rock spell does is that, yes, you have to cast it just like a normal spell. You do need to succeed in your spellcasting roll, taking into account the entire process with tinge rolls and all. But if you are successful, the evoker can target a piece of rugged terrain within 10 strides of them and return a destroyed rock troll back into play with 8 wounds. This is where the slumber comes in big, because slumber essentially means that you can always respawn your rock troll from the last position it occupied before it was destroyed for the first time, that is. Obviously, if there are other pieces of rugged terrain available, then those are fair game for raising or resurrecting essentially your rock troll, but there's at least going to be that one piece of terrain that was the last known position of the rock troll before they were taken out. When a unit is destroyed, the rulebook instructs you to remove all the stress, all the markers, all the tokens from that unit, which essentially means that the rock troll comes back into life free of stress, free of any states that hindered it before it went down. The only quote-unquote penalties that you suffer is the fact that the rock troll comes into play with 8 wounds, so down 1 out of its whopping 9 wounds. And also you have to place the rock troll adjacent to the terrain or inside the terrain if the rock troll can fit that you are targeting. And this is somewhat problematic because, as stated earlier, the rock troll actually lacks the preferred terrain rugged rule. So they will be respawned into a position from which they will gain slowed the moment they start moving, and they actually can't charge immediately thereafter since they are touching a piece of rugged terrain. But hey, getting to resurrect a 35.9 wound model is pretty rad, so having to suffer some impairment as a result is to be expected. I can imagine that the rock troll being brought back takes some time to reassemble itself, and thus it's moving a bit slow before it gets going all the way. The Raise the Rock spell also has 2 black dice alterations. that increase the likelihood that the evoker will have to suffer a point of tinge as a result, or even several points of tinge if several are combined points of tinge for casting this spell. The first alteration allows the rock troll to be healed as many wounds as there were successes on the willpower roll to cast the spell. Remember that in a pinch you can always suffer a point of tinge in order to add a automatic success to your spellcasting roll, which can allow you to doctor up a wounded rock troll even further. You can obviously use this spell just to heal a rock troll. You don't have to be resurrecting one also, but I don't think that's going to be a high value proposition use of an activation under most circumstances, at least not just for the intent or the idea of just healing your rock troll. There's also another alteration that allows you to displace the rock troll too. And this is the, I think, bigger, more important alteration of the spell, since this can actually allow the rock troll to evacuate the rugged terrain without suffering its ill effects. And this ability can also be combined with the fourth and last passive skill of the rock troll that we are going to be discussing next. The fourth and last passive skill of the rock troll is called Ancestral Bond. This is a passive skill that's usable once per round, so at max 3 times during a game. This passive skill is representing the close relationship between the evoker that has summoned a rock troll and their stony creation. This is an interesting way of adding additional activation economy to a Northern Tribes warband, and this is a way of doing so without having to include Alborg or the Wrath main. So a little bit more variation onto the extra activation game, or at least pseudo activation game of the Northern Tribes. And also the possibility, obviously, of compounding several of these abilities in a single company. But back to Ancestral Bond. There are essentially two ways to leverage this ability. Either you perform a full activation with your rock troll, and at the end of that activation you suffer a point of stress on an evoker, and the evoker gets to perform a simple action. And I would imagine that 9 times out of 10 this action is going to be casting a spell. Usually probably Spirit of Thermopleurus, but obviously sometimes summoning a rock or even raising the rock can come into question. Sadly, this is just a simple action. This is not an activation per se, so an evoker that's taking advantage of the Ancestral Bond to perform a skill cannot access Delegate of the Ancestors ability. Then again, if you are looking to use Delegate of the Ancestors, maybe move and cast a spell with your evoker, you can activate your evoker first, and after you are done with the evoker, suffer a point of stress on the rock troll instead, and then perform a simple action with the rock troll. I would imagine that quite a high potential activation from this ability and all the abilities that we have seen so far would go something along the lines of this. The evoker activates, maybe moves, casts Raise the Rock on the rubble caused by a death or the destruction of a rock troll. To re-summon the rock troll back to the field of battle, they alter the spell so that the rock troll gets to displace 2, and thanks to their whopping 4 stride base size, they are actually moving quite a lot, and they can use this extra movement granted by the spell to engage something in melee, and then at the end of the evoker's activation, the rock troll takes a point of stress to perform a simple action and attack whatever they had just engaged. So that's pretty cool, and that's that's some quite hefty synergy right there. Obviously, there are also other ways of making use of this ability. Getting to move your rock troll via a simple action can also be surprisingly powerful. If you can, for example, occupy a key position on the battlefield, maybe seal a bottleneck that is going to stop your opponent from effectively moving forward, then that's going to be extremely high value thing to do. And I think this is a nice ability because this makes the much maligned evoker feel way more impactful a pick, way more desirable a pick when constructing your company. So you are not just bringing the evoker in order to have someone who can resurrect the rock troll if it's destroyed. You are also getting this round by round synergy from having both on the field. So I really appreciate that. Let's rock and finish this video with an end analysis. So far, the rock troll seems like a high complexity and high potential piece for me. I really like the idea that there is a high skill cap and high potential with the different uses of this model, and that's something that I feel gives agency to the Northern Tribes player, and I really appreciate that. Not that our other units don't do that, but more the merrier, right? The rock troll can be leveraged to disrupt the opponent's game plan, and thus the rest of the Northern Tribes warband can find it easier to take down the enemy and do what they came to do. The fact that the rock troll is extremely durable and it can be returned to the field if it's destroyed, and the fact that the thing is large and immovable means that dealing with the rock troll by attriting it should be exceedingly difficult and extremely unlikely to come at a cost that's acceptable to the enemy. So the trick is going to be for the Northern Tribes player to try to find ways that will force their opponents into engaging the rock troll and suffering as a result. When it comes to actually fighting actively, the rock troll can make use of large in order to get access to the backline enemy units that traditionally can feel pretty safe behind the more hard-hitting and difficult to get through front line. And while the rock troll isn't a terribly high damage piece, at least not in the Northern Tribes faction, getting to attack this more fragile tech stuff that wasn't planning on fighting anything meaningful can provide some nice attrition value also. The fact that the rock troll can also move through enemy units and even charge units other than the one they are currently engaged with can also provide some nice opportunities to leverage the crowd control effects of this elemental. Getting to find the right spot from which to shove aid your opponent can be quite meaningful under the right circumstances, and there are even some situations where you can leverage, for example, potentially a souped up Spirit of Thermopleurus to inflict some stress on a already stressed out enemy unit, shove it back via attack, and then watch them break and flee far away from the front line, and thus condemning the enemy unit to being irrelevant for a time being at least. The strong synergies that can be leveraged with the inclusion of the evoker in addition to a rock troll in your company means that I would expect us to see more of the orcish sorceresses going forward, and I think that's going to be quite nice. The evokers have been quite unpopular with the Northern Tribes players so far, so I'm really happy to expect to see more of them on the field going forward. Then again, I don't necessarily think that the Northern Tribes players must see the Evoker and the Rock Troll as a package deal. I think it's quite safe to say that the Rock Troll is more than capable of providing 35 points worth of value without you being able to resurrect them or move them additional times or place and heal them. So one has to be careful when considering whether bringing an evoker is something that one wants to be doing. Then again, if you are not bringing an evoker, you are leaving some benefits unused, and that might then turn out to be not so great also. Phew, that's my thoughts on the rock troll, at least for now. Hope to see you all soon again, fellow travelers. Bye for now.